Let's break down a lot of the big moving pieces here in the markets today and today's close. Danielle Shay, Director of Options and Trader Specialist at Simpler Trading. Danielle, great to have you here with us today. Markets closing in the red. The big takeaway, what do you grasp from today? Is it Fed Chair Jerome Powell's comments or U.S.-China trade tensions that's really taking the cake right now?
I honestly think it's a mix of both. So you have a repo market that's getting out of control. Yes, the Fed is going to expand their balance sheet to try and control that. But the fact that it's getting out of control is not good to begin with. Then you also have this situation with China. You have a Chinese government that's probably going to want to come to a deal with a president who is under an impeachment process and is up for re-election. And so, there's just not a lot out there giving investors confidence right now. So you have the stock market sliding.
Sure. I want to just actually turn to Powell's comments first, because we talked a lot about the China stuff earlier today. So we haven't dedicated enough time really to what he said. Again, saying here now from again, Powell's comments, that the central bank would once again begin expanding its investment into government securities, maybe another interest rate cut this month, but this policy not on a preset course. How much of a deviation was today's message from those that he is really, and even away from just the Fed meetings themselves, spoken about, Danielle?
Well, I find it interesting because he stated the last time he talked, I think it was a couple of weeks ago when he did announce that there was going to be a rate cut, he kind of brushed aside the whole repo situation. And so I feel like today was the first time that he actually addressed that and really spoke to that. So I wouldn't really consider it to be a divergence from the previous comments. I would just consider it to be in conjunction with the rate cut. And now he's talking about something that's been happening.
Talking about something that's been happening, but also kind of getting more of a sense, at least tomorrow we'll be getting more of a sense of what exactly was said within that meeting, within the FOMC meeting in the minutes. What are the details that you're looking to grasp onto there and looking to get more information about?
So what I want to know is the rate cut schedule for the rest of the year. And I know that's the main thing that investors have been wanting to see. We already know that Powell and the Fed, they're working to maintain the economic expansion. They're going to use whatever tools they have in their power, which, he stated multiple times. But I think what investors are primarily looking for is the rate cut situation. Are we going to cut again in October? Are we going to cut again later in the year? Because through his previous comments, he has not stated what the course of the rest of the year looks like as of now.
Yeah, and he, again, I think trying to emphasize that this is not a trend. This is not a trend. That's the only thing that he has said sort of consistently. So take that as you will. Okay, let's switch it over to trade, because this week was supposed to be a big week, right? We had seen a lot of optimism going into these trade talks in Washington, D.C., the highest level of those meetings with the Vice Premier of China and the U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer happening on Thursday. But now we've had a lot of now new news this week, especially given the blacklisting of new Chinese companies, the restriction of visas of some of these Chinese officials as well. If you were to take we are taking a step back. If you're looking at this as we are, would you say that things are going well or that they're not going well because the U.S. is now putting more pressure onto China?
So, if you look back over the course of the past several months, this is a pattern that President Trump does. I mean, every single time there is a meeting set with China, a couple days beforehand, he pulls something else out of his hat, whether it's adding more companies to the blacklist. I think before we're focusing on the chip makers. I mean, it's something different every time. And I think it's a negotiating tactic that he uses. He really just wants to hold their feet to the fire, at least in my opinion. And so whether or not it's working, we're going to have to find out when they actually go to the table and see if that's something that has pressured the Chinese sufficiently that they want to make a deal.
How much is the 2020 presidential election a determining factor in the round of talks that are taking place right now, and the other items that are still on the table for both the U.S. side and China, even before the election? How much do they weigh into Thursday's talks that are going to be set to commence?
I personally think it's a huge determining factor because, if you think about it, pretend you're China. You've been dealing with President Trump now for the last 3 years. He's playing hardball. You just kind of have to look at it and say, what would I rather do? Would I rather take a deal that I don't want? Or do I want to wait and see if he gets impeached, or if in fact he gets voted out and there's someone else in their place? It also sets up the Democrats in a good spot, because what they can do is they can say, hey, guess what? If you vote for us, we're not going to have this trade war that's slowing down the economy. And so I think that the election is absolutely critical, and we just don't know what the Chinese are going to do in that aspect, if they're going to wait it out or not. It depends how bad the trade war is impacting them.
Well, I hate to go down a rabbit hole of ifs, but we've seen the tenor come from Elizabeth Warren around a separate issue, but that also entertains China. And she is taking a sharp tone as to how the NBA responded to its own issue with China right now. With that in mind, could that actually steer some of the conversation if Elizabeth Warren is to, by some chance, win the presidency? Could that mean that China is looking at this and saying, if that happens, we wouldn't want to deal with her because she's going to take a much sharper tone and tenor than the administration that we're working with now?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that they are paying attention to our election cycle. I think they're paying attention to the impeachment cycle, and they're going to either try to speed up the process or slow it down based on whoever is in charge. So if it's good for them, to wait it out, maybe they'll do that. And if it's not so good for them to wait it out, then they're more likely to do that. But it's so hard to say with all of the current ifs right now.
All right, Danielle, we'll keep an eye on as best we can, as we always do. Thank you, as always, for being on with us. Danielle Shay is Director of Options and Trader Specialist at Simpler Trading. Thank you again, Danielle.